The DNA doesn't matter. You'd be an amazing father, she cried after I found out she cheated and the child wasn't mine. I packed my life and vanished. Now she's a single mom and her affair partner's in jail. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The can of paint was called Serene Sky. It was a stupid name for a shade of blue, but I loved it. I'd rolled it onto the west wall of the second bedroom, transforming it from a bland beige box into the first real chapter of our future. My t-shirt was speckled with it, my knuckles crusted with a faint blue tint. I didn't care. This was the nursery. Lisa was 12 weeks along. We'd seen the heartbeat at the last scan, a frantic, flickering little ghost on the screen that made my own heart feel too big for my chest. We decided to wait to tell people until after the first trimester, but I'd already bought a tiny pair of dinosaur booties I kept hidden in my sock drawer. I'd take them out sometimes, just to hold them. That day, I'd left work early. I'd picked up the flowers from the corner stall, peonies, her favorite, and a ridiculously expensive prenatal massage gift certificate. She'd been anxious lately, withdrawn. I chalked it up to hormones and the sheer, terrifying magnitude of growing a human. I wanted to be the steady one, the rock. I let myself into our apartment, the quiet hum of the city fading behind the door. Lise? You home? No answer. Maybe she was napping. I padded through the living room, a smile already on my face, planning to leave the flowers and certificate on her pillow. She was at the kitchen table. Not napping, just sitting, staring at a sealed white envelope on the table in front of her, as if it were a live bomb. Her face was the color of chalk. Hey, I said, my cheerful tone feeling suddenly hollow. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. She didn't look up. Her hands were clenched together so tightly her knuckles were white. The envelope had a clinic's logo on it. Something cold and sharp began to prickle at the base of my spine. Lisa? What's that? She finally lifted her eyes to mine. The fear in them was so absolute it stole the air from my lungs. This wasn't morning sickness anxiety. This was pure, undiluted terror. I needed to be sure, she whispered, her voice raspy. Sure about what? I asked, though some part of me, some primitive, stupid part, already knew. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat, the peonies feeling like a lead weight in my hand. I dropped them on the table. She took a shaky breath. After the first appointment, I had this feeling. I couldn't shake it. So I got a test. A test for what? I was pushing, wanting her to say it, to make the unspeakable thing real, so I could fight it, so I could prove her wrong. She just stared at me, a silent plea in her eyes. My gaze dropped to the envelope. My name wasn't on it, just hers, and a client number. The cold feeling spread from my spine to my limbs. The world seemed to narrow to the surface of that kitchen table. The stupid, cheerful peonies, her trembling hands, and that pristine white envelope. Open it, I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. Mike, open it, Lisa. Her fingers fumbled, tearing the corner, then ripping the flap. She pulled out a single sheet of paper. Her eyes scanned the lines, filled with legal and scientific jargon, before stopping at the bottom. A small, choked sound escaped her throat. A sob, or a gasp. She slid the paper across the table to me. I didn't want to touch it. I forced my hand to pick it up. The words swam. Prenatal paternity analysis. Alleged father, Michael F. Client supplied sample. My toothbrush. She'd used my toothbrush. I forced my eyes to focus, to find the line that mattered. Conclusion. Based on the analysis of the DNA loci, the alleged father, Michael F., is excluded as the biological father of the fetus. The probability of paternity is 0%. 0. The number was so final. So absolute. It was a black hole, sucking all the sound, the light, the future out of the room. The dinosaur booties. The serene sky blue walls. The frantic little heartbeat. It all turned to ash. I looked up at her. The woman I'd loved for 5 years. The woman I was going to marry. The mother of my child. Except she wasn't. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. I saw the calculations going on behind her eyes. The fear was still there, but it was being shoved aside by something else. A frantic, desperate pragmatism. She started crying, but the tears seemed performative. They weren't tears of shame for what she'd done. They were tears of frustration that her perfect plan was crumbling. Mike, she said, her voice straining for a calmness that was utterly grotesque. Just think about it logically. Logic. The word hit me like a physical blow. The DNA doesn't matter, she pleaded, leaning forward. Not really. You have a good job, you're stable, you'd be an amazing father. Jake, he's a mess. He can't do this. Jake. The name landed. A guy from her gym. She'd mentioned him in passing months ago. I'd bought him a protein shake once when I'd met them there. He'd laugh too loud and clap me on the back like we were old friends. But we can, she said, her eyes wide, willing me to understand. You can. This baby needs a father like you. And there it was. The full, breathtaking audacity of it. The betrayal wasn't just the affair. It was this cold, transactional proposal. I wasn't a person to her. I wasn't the man she'd promised to spend her life with. I was a utility. A stable, reliable, financially sound utility. A better option than the mess she'd made. The rock. I was supposed to be the rock she built her life on, even if the life she was building wasn't mine. I placed the paper back on the table, smoothing it carefully. I looked at my hands, at the specks of serene sky blue paint. I had been painting a nursery for another man's child. I stood up. I pushed my chair in. The legs made a soft scraping sound against the floor tiles. It was the only sound in the world. I turned and walked out of the kitchen. I didn't look back. Mike, where are you going? We need to talk about this. Her voice chased me, sharp with panic now. The logic wasn't working. I walked down the hall to my office, opened the door, stepped inside, and locked it. I leaned my back against the wood and slid to the floor. On the other side, I could hear her crying. Not for us. Not for the life she'd shattered. She was crying for her backup plan. And it was walking away. The grain of the office door pressed against my back. Each muffled sob from the kitchen was a tiny, distant explosion. They weren't pleas for forgiveness. They were the sounds of a system crashing, a plan failing. The sound of a project manager realizing her most reliable contractor was walking off the job. I didn't move. I just sat on the floor, listening to the death rattle of my old life. The paper in my mind had only one line on it, 0%. It was a clean, clinical void. It left no room for anger yet, no room for the gut-wrenching grief I knew was waiting in the wings. There was only a profound, echoing silence. The future I'd been meticulously painting had just evaporated. After a while, her cries subsided. I heard her footsteps retreat down the hall to our bedroom. The door clicked shut. I stood up. My body felt like it belonged to someone else. I opened my office door. The apartment was silent, tomb-like. I walked past the kitchen table. The peonies looked obscene now, a bright, cheerful line next to the damning clinical report. I didn't look at it. I didn't touch it. I went to the hall closet and pulled out my gym duffel bag. Not a suitcase. A suitcase would imply a journey, a return. This was an evacuation. My movements were mechanical, precise. I went to my dresser and opened my sock drawer. My fingers brushed against the soft wool of the tiny dinosaur booties. I closed my eyes for a second, then took them out. I didn't look at them. I dropped them into the duffel bag. They were mine. My hope, my stupidity. She didn't get to keep them. I took only what was unequivocally mine. Clothes, my passport, the box with my grandfather's watch, my important documents from the fireproof lockbox. I left the jewelry she'd given me, the books we'd bought together, the photos. I was a ghost curating my own remnants. I walked into the nursery. The smell of fresh paint still hung in the air. Serene sky. I looked at the wall I'd spent so long perfecting. In the dim evening light, it looked gray and dead. I went to my laptop on the desk and logged into our joint bank account. I calculated my half of the rent and utilities for the next month. A final payment. I initiated the transfer, the click of the mouse echoing in the silent room. Transaction complete. I found a pad of sticky notes by the bed. The pen felt heavy in my hand. What was there to say? A novel's worth of pain? A single question mark? No. She had spoken in logic. I would reply in kind. I wrote 7 words. I stuck the note to the refrigerator door, right at eye level. A cold, hard fact to match her cold, hard logic. Then, I shouldered the duffel bag. It wasn't heavy. It was frighteningly light. I took one last look around the apartment. The home we'd built. It already felt like a museum exhibit of a life that had never actually existed. I opened the front door and stepped out into the hallway, pulling it closed behind me. The lock engaged with a soft, final click. I didn't go to a hotel. I drove to my friend Ben's apartment. I'd texted him from the parking garage downstairs. Code red. Need the couch. Tell no one. He was ex-military. He asked no questions. When he opened the door, he took one look at my face and the duffel bag and just nodded. Couch is yours. Beer's in the fridge. I dropped the bag on his floor. My phone, still silenced, began to light up in my pocket. Lisa. Then again. And again. Then a string of texts popped up on the screen. Lisa, where did you go? Lisa, we need to talk about this like adults. Lisa, you can't just run away from your responsibilities. Lisa, Mike, answer me. This is childish. The anger began then, a low simmer replacing the numb shock. Responsibilities. The word was a spark on gasoline. I didn't respond. I went into the settings of my phone, my fingers moving with a calm I didn't feel. I blocked her number. Then I opened my social media apps and blocked her there, too. One by one, I severed the digital threads. The texts started coming from an unknown number. Her friend, Sarah. Unknown number. Mike, it's Sarah. Lisa is really worried. She's pregnant, you know. You need to come home. Unknown number. This is really shitty of you. She's a mess. I blocked that number too. The next morning, from a different unknown number, the tone shifted. Unknown number. My parents are asking about the wedding plans. What am I supposed to tell them? Unknown number. The landlord needs to know about the lease. You're really going to screw me over financially? I deleted them. I drank Ben's coffee. I called my boss and explained I had a family emergency and would be working remotely for a week. Ben left for work, clapping me on the shoulder on his way out. Rage clean if you need to. Just don't break the good TV. I was alone in his quiet apartment. The silence was different here. It wasn't the suffocating silence of the apartment I'd left. It was empty. A blank page. I opened my duffel bag to unpack. My clothes, my documents. My hand closed around the tiny dinosaur booties at the bottom. I pulled them out and held them in my palm. For the first time, the grief hit me, a physical wave so powerful it doubled me over. I sat on the edge of Ben's couch, crying silent, heaving sobs that felt like they were tearing something loose inside my chest. I cried for the ghost of a child, for the future that was stolen, for the man I was 12 hours ago, who was so blissfully, tragically stupid. When it passed, I felt hollowed out, but cleaner. I placed the booties on Ben's bookshelf, a tiny monument to my own naivety. Then I got online and found a furnished studio apartment for a 6-month lease. It was available immediately. I was no one's rock. I was no one's backup plan. I was just a guy on a couch, starting from less than zero. And for the first time since I'd seen that envelope, I took a full, deep breath. It was mine. The air was mine. The silence was mine. The ruin was mine. And I would build something new from it. Alone. The silence was my sanctuary. The studio apartment was a blank box with a bed, a couch, and a view of a brick wall. It was perfect. There was nothing of us here. No memories, no ghosts, just the sterile hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of city traffic. I built a new routine from the ground up. Wake up, run until my lungs burned. Work from home, losing myself in lines of code that obeyed a logic I understood. Lift weights at the gym, pushing the physical until it drowned out the emotional. I was a ghost in my own life, and I was meticulously building a new body for myself. The attempts to reach me were a distant, persistent buzzing, like a fly against a window pane on the other side of the house. They came in waves. Wave 1, the angry and the entitled. From a new number every few days. Unknown, you're really going to abandon us? I knew you weren't strong enough. Unknown, my doctor's appointments are starting. You promised you'd be at all of them. Unknown, we need to figure out the baby registry. Stop being a child. I deleted them without reading the full notifications. Block. Delete. Block. It was a reflex. My mutual friends were the next channel. My phone would ring. Mike, hey, listen, Lisa called me. She's really struggling. She says you just vanished? What's going on, man? My response was always the same, delivered in a flat, calm tone that brooked no argument. It's over between us. The details are private. I'd appreciate it if we could talk about something else. Most of them got the hint. A few didn't, and they found themselves gently but firmly eased out of my life. Wave 2, the desperate and the panicked. The tone shifted as the reality of her situation began to dawn. The texts became less about anger and more about logistics. The crumbling infrastructure of the life she'd thought she'd secured. Unknown, the landlord is asking for next month's rent. I can't cover it alone. Unknown, my health insurance is through your job. What am I supposed to do? Unknown, Mike, please. I'm scared. Just call me. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity. It was like reading weather reports from a country I'd never visited. The karma didn't come to me in a dramatic letter. It came through Ben. He'd stayed friends with Sarah, Lisa's best friend, who was now witnessing the full, unvarnished train wreck. One night, over a beer on his balcony, he laid it out for me. So, Sarah's freaking out. Thinks Lisa's having a breakdown. I took a sip of my beer. Yeah. Apparently, Lisa finally went to track down Jake. To get child support, or something. Showed up at his place. Ben let out a low whistle. Bad timing. Or great timing, depending on your perspective. I remained silent, waiting. The place was swarming with cops. Turns out Jim Bro Jake wasn't just a mess. He was a full-blown dealer. They raided the place while she was there. Found a stash of pills and an unregistered handgun. I stared out at the city lights, the story settling over me. It was so absurd it felt scripted. He's looking at real time, Mike. Years. And get this, when they cuffed him, he looked right at Lisa and screamed at her to get lost, that she'd ruined everything. Charming guy. I took another long drink. The pieces clicked into place with a cold, final logic. The mess was a criminal. The exciting, dangerous affair partner was going to prison. And the stable, logical backup plan had vaporized. So now, Ben continued, she's 7 months pregnant. The dad's in county lockup awaiting trial, with no money and a lifetime of problems. She's alone. Her parents are pissed, and, from the sound of it, not much help. She's broke. And she's unraveling. I finished my beer. The silence stretched between us, comfortable for me, heavy for him. You okay, man? He finally asked. I looked at him, and for the first time in months, I realized I was. Yeah, Ben, I said, my voice even. I really am. The final attempt didn't come from a random number. It came in person, through a proxy. I was leaving my new office building, the one I'd transferred to, enjoying the crisp evening air. A woman stepped out from near a concrete pillar. Mike, thank God. It was Barbara, Lisa's mother. She looked older, weary, her face etched with lines of worry and disappointment. She wringed her hands, a gesture I'd seen Lisa mimic 1,000 times. I stopped walking. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I simply waited. I'm so sorry to ambush you like this, she began, her voice trembling. She doesn't know I'm here. I didn't know what else to do. I remained silent, my hands in my pockets. Mike, please. You have to talk to her. She's not well. She's about to have this baby all alone. That monster is in jail. He's nothing. She sees now what a terrible, terrible mistake she made. She took a step closer, her eyes pleading. She needs you. The baby needs you. That child is innocent in all this. You could still be a father to it. You could still be a family. Don't you see? This is your second chance, too. I let her words hang in the air between us. I listened to the entire plea, the entire fantasy she'd constructed where I was the noble knight who would ride in and save her daughter from the consequences of her own choices. When she was done, I spoke. My voice was calm, low, and utterly devoid of malice or sympathy. It was the voice of a man stating simple, irrefutable facts. Barbara, I'm sorry you had to come all this way. She blinked, a flicker of hope in her eyes at the apology. I continued. What happened to Lisa is unfortunate. I chose the word deliberately. Unfortunate. But unfortunate is getting a flat tire. What she did was a conscious choice. She chose to betray me. She chose to have a child with a criminal. Those are her consequences to manage. Not mine. The hope in her eyes died, replaced by a stunned disbelief. I truly hope she and the child are healthy and safe, I said, and I meant it in the most distant, global way possible, the way you hope strangers in a news story are okay. But I am no longer her solution. I have a new life now. It doesn't include her. I saw the argument forming on her lips, the maternal desperation to fix this. I cut it off. Please don't contact me again. If you do, I will have to consider it harassment and act accordingly. Good night, Barbara. I turned and walked toward the parking garage. My steps were even, my breathing steady. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew she would be standing there, frozen, finally understanding that the door wasn't just closed. It was gone, and the man who had once lived behind it was gone, too. I was the vanisher, and I had finally vanished from their world completely. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.